Hello everyone, welcome once again to the final month of the second year of the clown decade, where while many things seem to be getting a lot worse, there are still some white pills thrown to us that I hope are especially useful to those of us that think that it's not worth fighting for anymore. That is a, frankly, defeatist attitude that I do not subscribe to, though I can see why you would subscribe to that, so I'm going to go through a couple of stories saying why that might be the case for you. For instance, from the Times today, inciting incel attacks should be hate crime, says lawyers. Jake Davidson, a self-described incel, shot dead his mother and 4 members of the public and himself in Plymouth earlier this year. Yes, it appears that acceptable institutional targets, such as men who struggle to get women, we need entire laws in place that do the same things as other laws we have in place, for God knows what reason, because we rarely have incel attacks. But with all the stabbings going on in London, just nothing much needs to be done there. You try and bring stop and search back, nada. Can't do that. It's racist or something. So I suppose we should read the article. Encouraging attacks based on incel misogyny should be considered a hate crime as a result in harsher sentences, senior law reform experts have said. Why does it need to be harsher if specifically an incel does it? Because from here, we seem to have gone from making protected classes, which is basically anything but straight, white, and of course males that have decided they're not trans or non-binary people. We've gone from protecting all of those classes to now saying we have certain types of classes that need to be punished more by law. I.e., if you subscribe to an ideology, and I just completely reject incels being a violent ideology, I don't think they're violent. I think a lot of people in that community are just very frustrated men who have ideas I simply find disagreeable rather than harmful. But the point being is that law experts are now saying we need to punish this particular set of people, which is just coming full circle when it comes to intersectionality. Not only do we need to have harsher punishments if a crime is committed against someone of a particular class, but if you happen to find yourself in another class, i.e. you're an incel, well, we need even harsher punishments for you. This would be like pointlessly adding another law that says if you're an Islamic terrorist, you should have a harsher punishment than if you're just, well, say an incel terrorist. But it's actually not doing it that way around. It's saying if you commit a terrorist attack and you're an incel, you deserve whatever's worse than life in prison. Anyway, let's see who said this. Recommendations published today by the Law Commission come 2 months after Jake Davidson, a self-described incel, shot dead his mother, 4 members of the public, and himself in Plymouth. The term incel, or involuntary celibate, is defined as being a member of a subculture of men who consider themselves unattractive sexually to women, and as a result harbour often violent misogynistic views. They're not often violent or misogynistic. I know this because I know incels. They don't even go as far as dehumanising women. I think they just, from my perspective, have a misunderstanding of how women think and act. But anyway, in its reports to ministers, the Commission said that incel-related stirring up, encouraging others to commit violent offences, should attract the same aggravating element as with hate crimes involving race and religion, and therefore potentially lead to maximum sentences. Now, it appears that because this article is terribly written, I have completely misunderstood what the Law Commission was trying to say, up until halfway through the article, so thank you, Times. So they're not saying incels should have harsh sentences than anyone else who commits a hate crime against a woman. They're just saying misogyny in general should be a hate crime, because for some reason it isn't already in the UK. And of course I'm against hate crimes of any type. Why do you deserve a harsher sentence just because of the way you think? We punish action, we do not punish thought. Or we should, I should say. We absolutely punish thought, because people type things on Twitter or post funny videos of their dog and get fined £800 for it or end up 4 weeks in jail. Now, if you make this a hate crime, jokes against women could easily be considered a hate crime. So every tweet where I've said women are terrible, I am risking a fine or jail time over that. So, the article goes on to say, however, it backed away from calling for incel misogyny to be considered an aggravating factor in actual violent crime. A spokesman said they did not want to promote a hierarchy of rape, interesting, in which offences that did not involve incel behaviour became less serious. Right, so they're doing the opposite of what the headline was kind of shouting out to me. Right, okay, thank you for that, Times. The report said such reform would help to tackle the growing threat of incel ideology and its potential to lead to serious criminal offending. It claims there is a growing threat from incels calling for the rape and or murder of women. Hence, while incels have been a thing for probably the bigger part of a decade, probably even longer. We've had, in the UK at least, one explicitly incel terrorist attack, and we don't even know if his motives were incel related. But I'm just glad that the law reformers seem to be stepping away from reforming gun control anymore in the UK. It's already tight enough as it is. But really they're just using the incel shooter as an excuse to fast-track misogyny hate crime into law. When really Jake Davidson, if he didn't kill himself, would probably have life in jail anyway. Again, what harsher sentence is there than life in jail for killing 5 people? It's not an issue about, oh, we don't think we're doing enough to tackle crime. It's simply a way for them to protect women further, because women clearly need more protection. That's why double the men get killed than women every year. What I think would be a better solution to this would basically for the institutions to stop treating men like shit. Stop with the constant pandering to women. Stop only caring about men when it comes to suicides and mental health. We have more problems than that. And stop with the endless propaganda of, look what these women are doing. You go, girls. And all the crap in all media, from comics to films, where they have to retcon and say, oh, men weren't actually that good, it was the women who were the real winners. Because at the end of the day, it is going to affect men. Because stories and myths are what we emulate our life off. We do try and become like fictitious heroes, whether we know it or not. So just throw men a bone these days, for God's sake. Anyway, moving on from the incel ideology to just one where we have to bow down to Black Lives Matter. School founded by slave trader Edward Colston will change its name. A statue of Edward Colston was torn down and rolled into Bristol's harbour during the Black Lives Matter protests last year. I do love it every time they say this. They say Edward Colston was a slave trader. No, Edward Colston had shares in probably hundreds of companies because he was a very rich man. Some of those companies traded slaves because it was an entire third of the Atlantic trade triangle. Was slavery bad? Yes. Was it considered bad at the time of Edward Colston's life? No. Judging history by modern morality is retarded and always will be retarded. As I will always say, it is equivalent to calling cavemen stupid because they didn't have our technology. Anyway, a private school named after the slave trader Edward Colston is to change its name despite local opposition. A consultation over whether the change of the name of Colston School in Bristol received more than 2,500 responses, more than 1,000 of which were from members of the public with no connection to the school. The Independent Day School said that keeping the name of Colston was the overall opinion of these respondents, but the 1,500 responses from staff, pupils and parents and former pupils showed that they were more inclined to see a change in the name of the school as a positive step. Well, of course teachers will. 90% of them are Labour supporters. So there you have it. Apparently all you need to do to get your way these days is find a statue of someone you don't like, tear it down and push it in some sort of body of water. This is the mob getting their way. This is the opposite of how we should respond. But unfortunately, we're just going to keep pandering to these people. Our football teams will still kneel for 2 seconds at the beginning of every match, but they'll still go off over to Qatar, where actual slavery is occurring. So they can't have that much of a problem with actual slave trading, can they? Absolute spastics. The governors of Colston School said they will now begin a process of deciding a new name, which will be announced next summer. Colston School is the last educational establishment in Bristol to bear the name of the merchant and philanthropist after decades of debate about his legacy in the city. And the general opinion of the city never changed. It was always in favour of saying Colston was a good man and a hero to the city. That was even true of the most recent poll before Black Lives Matter just went, tell you what, let's just tear his statue down, because we can get away with it and then people will bloody follow everything we ask for. And then we need to change the name of anything relating to him, just scratch him from the history records. But of course, the absolute twats will keep the money that he invested in them. Assuming his estate still exists, they should write a cheque back with interest, giving it directly to him, and then I'll set up a charity in Colston's name and try and get money off them to actually run a charity. That doesn't really care if you are not moral by today's standards, only that you were moral by your day's standards, and that you were generally seen as a good man, who put a lot of money into England, or in this case specifically Bristol. School leaders said that after the toppling of the Colston statue, the name would forever be associated with enslavement and deaths of African men, women and children. Oh, for the love of God. Why is it that every single person that we have venerated in England, we can only focus on the negatives on? That's all we can do now. Churchill, Bengal famine, even though it wasn't his fault. Nelson, they want to topple his bloody statue in Trafalgar Square down. Not exactly sure why. Probably because he was a military leader and military bad or something. Like, honestly, we're not allowed to be proud of anything here anymore. And I just outright reject that. And I just go completely hyperbolic on it when anyone tells me that I'm not allowed to venerate someone like Churchill. They said that the establishment was a very different school to the one founded by Colston in 1710, and that the majority of local people were in favour of changing the name. Well, that was just a lie. They even admitted before the overall reaction was to say, no, keep the name, you idiots. So why is the change in story here? But the rest of the article goes through some primary schools that have changed the name from Colston to other names. I think they're just area names now. But a governor from one of the primary schools that changed their name, his statement has really annoyed me, so I'll read it out. The governors said in a statement, Colston School had borne the name of Edward Colston for over 300 years, not because of any attempt at any stage to glorify or celebrate the man, but because Edward Colston paid for the school to be established in 1710 in order to prepare boys from poor families for meaningful apprenticeships. It's not there to celebrate it, it's clearly there to celebrate it. It is there, it is named that, because he paid for it specifically so that poorer kids could get an education. How is that not a thing to celebrate? His hospital, as it was called then, was established in a single house in the centre of Bristol during his lifetime, and he visited the school when it was open. The school was not named after Colston, rather it was named by Colston. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, you keep the name. I mean, we've kept the name of the King James Bible for centuries as well. But again, it wasn't named after King James, it was named because King James funded for the translation of it. It's not a good enough reason to then just change it. Oh, this really rich philanthropist set up this school with his money. Why the hell would we name it after him? I can't think why you'd name it after him. If you're going to reject his name, as I said before, give the money back to his estate, if it still exists. And if not, give it to the National Trust or something. It is ridiculous how weak and pathetic people are in these positions. They see one statue get torn down, they think, well, gotta go with the mob, otherwise our school's gonna get burned down. No, you should stay steadfast. Hold your ground, and for the love of God, defend British heroes, no matter what time period they're from. We venerate them for the good they did, and Colston did an unbelievable amount of good. More so than anyone in the Monday, probably. But unfortunately, we're in a time of weak men. Anyway, I think that's enough blackpilling for this video. Let's end on a white pill. Nurses demand exit from Stonewall diversity scheme. Nurses held a demonstration against Stonewall in Edinburgh in October. So this is why I'm quite white-pilled. As soon as a mass movement, say Stonewall, has run out of things to actually complain about and are actually detrimental to themselves, they do tend to become a bit of a public enemy. But it's a bit weird that Black Lives Matter is going on. I think the reason Black Lives Matter is finding so much success in the UK is because they're basically externalising all of America's problems over here. And this is a problem with our politics being so Americanised, but that's a different video. Hundreds of nurses have called on the regulatory body to withdraw from a diversity scheme run by Stonewall, warning that affiliation with the charity risks harming the reputation of the profession. Some 460 nurses have written to the Nursing and Midwifery Council demanding that it pulls out of the paid-for scheme, which aims to make workplaces more inclusive for LGBT people. The charity has been mired in controversy over its gender identity views. It has said people should be able to access single-sex hospital wards based on the gender they identify as, which obviously, because they're trans radical activists, they mean any gender you say you are at any given time, which is of course ridiculous. The nurses said that they did not support Stonewall's stance over the medication of children who present with gender dysphoria, and its view that patients should be able to access single-sex wards based on their gender identity. Two things I'm on with the nurses with. They are both ridiculous stances. They also highlighted the charity's behaviour towards those who speak out on gender ideology or challenge its influence, saying that it was vitally important for nurses to speak out for the rights and needs of women patients. One of the signatories wrote, "I support the need of trans people, but not to the eradication of women and women's rights." Another wrote that they felt unable to protect female patients over fears of being seen as discriminating. I feel I am unable to protect my female/women patients and advocate for them without fear of recrimination. So, one of the comments there was a bit turfy, going on about, oh, we need to protect women's rights and things like that. Which, of course, I'm just for universal rights. And when it comes to hospitals, it's perfectly sensible policy to have separate wards for male and female patients. And the ones just pushing, saying it's a bad idea to let clearly a man into a woman's ward is a bad idea. That's fine. Along with the pushing kids to have hormone replacement therapy is also a bad thing, I think. So if they're just pushing that, that's fine, but if they start going a bit turfy about it, I start to lose interest. Anyway, organised by the campaign group Women's Place UK, the letter to the Nursing and Midwifery Council read, "The history of Stonewall is to promote equality and safeguard the rights of the LGBT community is one to celebrate. However, nursing affiliations must be based on evidence, not ideology, and judged on current record and strategy, not legacy achievements and reputation. We believe that as a profession, there is specific risk to the reputation of nurses and our ability to work within our code from the NMC's affiliation with Stonewall." So, there you go. We can't work with Stonewall because they are ideologically possessed and their ideology completely conflicts with reality. Perfectly good response, and one that I completely back. But of course, Stonewall didn't stay silent about it, because a Stonewall spokesperson said, I love how it's spokesperson from Stonewall, but when it's from the Midwifery Council, it's spokeswoman. Anyway, this petition is listed with inaccuracies and misinformation. It is disgraceful that these groups continue to misrepresent our Diversity Champions programme, which simply provides supports to organisations to build inclusive workplace environments. Well, I'm afraid the BBC didn't agree with that either, and so have a load of other British institutions, because you're clearly ideologically possessed and don't care about reality or what people actually want. Ultimately, it is lesbian, gay, bi, trans and queer people who are harmed by these kind of baseless attacks. Because Stonewall are clearly the one and only mouthpiece for all lesbian, gays, bis, trans and queer people, whatever they mean by the last one. Well, I'm afraid a lot of people disagree. And by people, I mean institutions. You even got the ridiculous left-wing BBC to push against you. And I believe the Department of Health even had issues with your position. So, of course, the next domino was going to be another health-related one, being the Nurse and Midwifery Council. So there's your white pill. As soon as they start overstepping far too much in a particular direction, where they are actually adding very little, these organisations end up just crumbling under their own weight. So it seems in this case that Cthulhu has swam right a bit, take the white pills where you can. We get very, very little these days. But of course, as mentioned before, you've got Black Lives Matter, basically everyone's bowing to them. And lawmakers are trying to expand hate crime laws, but there will be a point where they become so useless that people will actually probably start being more critical about them, and maybe we'll start to see a swim right. Though we're in the clown decade, so I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But take the little victories that you can, as I have. Anyway, that's everything I had for you today, so as usual, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.